I'm very excited for this episode to get underway. But before I introduce my guests, I just want to thank you for listening and sharing Should Have Listened to My Mother with your friends and family. We just started our 6th season and we're growing every day. So thank you very, very much. And you can find us on all social media platforms, including YouTube. And please take a minute to subscribe, rate, and like the show. Your feedback means the world to us. Today's guests have made it their business to focus on female health and well-being. Now, that doesn't mean that if you are male and listening that you should walk away, because I believe this information can only make you a better brother, husband, father, cousin, and friend if you're knowledgeable, understanding, and compassionate about women's health. The renowned Dr. Sharon Malone, a DC-based OBGYN and certified menopause practitioner and best-selling author, is with us. She is the chief medical advisor at Alloy Women's Health, a telehealth company that focuses on women over 40. Also joining us is Allison Kalsched, a women's strength and fitness expert and co-founder of Not Your Mother's Menopause New Jersey. Not Your Mother's Menopause New Jersey held their first ever symposium on January 12th, 2025 in Maplewood, New Jersey, with a roster of female professionals that range from OBGYN and menopause doctors and nutritionists to health, wellness, and weight loss experts, sex and relationship therapists, plus comedian Liz Glazer and attorney and author Jennifer Weiss-Wolf. And Jennifer is the executive director of Birnbaum Women's Leadership Center at NYU Law. In our time together, Dr. Malone, who's written what I call a love story or a tribute to her mother, 2 sisters and women who preceded her, her patients, friends, her work, and women around the world. She will share stories of her mother, Bertha, and information from her decades of work as OBGYN and mother. Dr. Malone says Bertha believed in hard work, education, and the power of God, not necessarily in that order, a clean house, and virtually no socializing outside of her church and her family. Dr. Malone's book is titled Grown Woman Talk, Your Guide to Getting Healthy and Staying Healthy. It's a non-intimidating read, chock full of all kinds of health-related information. Her selected music playlist clips for motivation and personal stories that have shaped her along the way. Dr. Malone was a keynote speaker at the sold-out Not Your Mother's Menopause New Jersey symposium held in Maplewood, and Alloy Health was the presenting sponsor of the event. Hello, Dr. Sharon Malone, and hello, Allison Kalsched.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Oh, so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's really wonderful, and I applaud you for pulling off, not that it's a miracle by any stretch, but it's a wonderful stepping stone for women, not only in Maplewood, New Jersey, but around the world, that we are finally talking about all those issues that we have with our health, because we usually, as women, we keep things bottled up and figure we don't, like you say, Dr. Malone, maybe if we don't talk about it or see anyone about it, it'll go away. Which we know does not work at all. So Bertha, from what I read in your book, was she was a wonderful woman by every stretch of the imagination. And she had you when she was 45 years old. You're the youngest of 8 children. And there were 7 years between you and the sibling above you. She was educated to 8th grade, I believe, your mom and your dad. And yet your parents knew, I might be jumping ahead a little here, they knew to move from rural Alabama to move the family to Mobile, Alabama for the betterment of the family. But there are so many similarities, not only between your mom and maybe your sister Vivian and your beautiful aunt, Dear, you used to call her Dear, Aurora, was it Aurora?
Yeah.
So, and the wonderful family stories that you have of the women gathering and say, this is old folk conversation. The culture was very different when you were growing up, when I was growing up. I mean, I'm the youngest of 7 and 6 girls and 1 boy. My mother, she didn't ever mention a word about anything. how about if we start off with just hearing a few of those stories, the ones that are closest to your heart about your mom?
Sure. My mom, to give you an idea of how much time, what the time span is, my mother was born in 1914. And being born in 1914 in rural Alabama was, it was a situation where there was really not any um, medical care to speak of. They survived based on mother wit and the collective community of women. Children were delivered by midwives who were part of the community. That's how they were all cared for. So this collective knowledge, I really have to give, I said, hats off to my mom because she knew so many things and how to treat and cure so many things because out of necessity, not really out of choice. And we are sort of coming back around to that, to understanding this collective wisdom that women have had. And I think that that's what's really lacking for a lot of us today is that we really don't have that community of women around us to support us, to get us through most of the challenges, not just in health, but just in life in general.
But also the fact that to take the time, and I don't know if it's just because of my background and my mother and our experiences with her healing us with our varied illnesses, we took the time to go through a process of thinking what could we use to help this situation. Not we didn't, I mean, we rarely had cough medicine in our house, and all the those kind of things. And you are subject to taking cod liver oil and the
Oh,
rubs that she used to do for you and all that kind of stuff, which is very different from today. So I don't think moms, they give themselves the credit that they deserve to think through the process.
I think you're absolutely right. And not everything is an emergency because the first response was never go to the doctor. She did go through a series of sort of triage things. And our medicine chest was rather limited. We had some baby aspirin, you had, some, maybe a few Luden's cough drops, some cod liver oil. I honestly never, I don't think I ever had a course of antibiotics in my childhood ever. Now, you can't tell me that with 8 kids, and I'm the youngest, so if anybody would have had it, it would have been me,
Right.
that 8 kids got through an entire childhood and survived to adulthood without a single course of antibiotics because, there were a lot of the home remedies that my mother would employ, they work. And as I say, we can all hear, we all made it to adult life with intact hearing.
Or so it
But
seems.
yes. But they would, but these things that we don't give ourselves credit for because we don't trust them. And again, we don't have that ancestral collective knowledge that my mother had with the women around her because my mother lost her mother when she was actually quite young.
Yes.
My mother was only 14 when her mother died, and she and her older sister, 16, had, 3 younger siblings to care for. And so, necessity is a great teacher. But, so we sort of got to correct that pendulum. Their medicine is not the answer for everything. But there is also a place and a time for it because I think that a lot of people suffered unnecessarily. And I think my mother died prematurely of colon cancer because of the things she didn't know. The things she knew. But there was a vast, gulf of things out there that she did not have access to. And she didn't even know what the signs and symptoms and warning signs were. And that is really sort of a lot of the information that I really wanted to collect and to put in my book, is to really put us back somewhere in the middle. Don't run to the doctor every time you have a sniffle, not necessary, but also don't ignore things beyond the point at which you've said, okay, I've given it the college try and I'm not better. Then please avail yourself of medical care. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Can you describe what the dinner table was like in your home growing up? Oh, before you were 12.
Well, my family is the tale of two families, or even the
Right.
tale of 3 families, because, the first 4 siblings were either married in the military, in college, or out of the house when I was born.
Right.
So I didn't have that experience of like, being around the table with 10 people, but I had the experience of being around the table with 5 people, because it was my 2 sisters, me and my parents. And so even with that, that's still a lot of people, to have to deal with. And my mother worked, which was also something that was, out of necessity. She was not working because she's like, oh, I feel fulfilled being a maid in, officers' quarters. No, she worked because she needed to work. And so my experience growing up, even with a working mother, she was still responsible for all of the things domestic. She shopped, she cooked, she cleaned, she did all of those. And then you enlist the help of all those children you have around the house. You got to
Right.
put them to work too.
If you can get them to do anything. Was that an option?
Exactly. But but the times when we had lots of people in the house, it was really around the holiday time when we had, and to this day, I can't really enjoy myself in a holiday unless I have a house full of people. And if I don't have family that are actually here, then I invite people. I'm like, yeah, you can't have Thanksgiving dinner with 4 people. That just doesn't seem right, So we just bring in all the found family and we sort of recreate those scenes, really that I had growing up around the holiday when everyone would come home for dinner.
Yeah, there's nothing like that. The prep that we did it was the older 4. My mom lost a couple of babies in between and the younger 3. So the cleaning of the house and the getting ready and going to the airport to pick them up, it was always a very festive occasion. If you were to republish this book right away, are there some stories about your mom that you wish you had put in that you would add?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. It's amazing to me that even though I only had 12 years with my mother, so that means really only about 7 years that I remember, how vivid those memories are of her, of how she was and how she behaved and moved around the world and the sense of confidence. My mother was a very calm woman, there's a because I guess with that many children, you pretty much have to be. So, I would say the stories that I don't know to tell
Oh,
would have been
yes.
the stories that I wish I had had a chance to ask my mother more about her growing up, because there's like this, not having grandmothers on either side of the family. I don't know. She never talked a lot about the stories that, when she was growing up. And I think that being in rural Alabama and now imagine now this is the early 20th century, when she was growing up. And I think that there were so many things that were so difficult, and so hard to talk about that she wanted to leave that in the past.
In the past, so she
She
wouldn't have
wanted to
to.
leave it there. But again, as an adult, I wish I knew to have asked her to really probed a little bit more about life, uh, even though it may have been difficult, the things that I wish that I really knew.
You both shared losing your mom at a young age. So, and that was my next. If you were able to sit down and have a conversation with your mom today, where would you be sitting? What would you be drinking? What would you be chatting about other than what we just discussed?
Well, my mother, this is actually very interesting. My mother was on a health food kick. She and her older sister, and I don't know where they got this from, but they started this when I was growing, I was a kid and I was just horrified. I was like, Mom, can we have Oreos? Can we have none of that? She, a cookie for her was a Lorna Doone. That's what she thought. And then my dad was a farmer for most of his life, so we always had a garden and we always had fresh vegetables. We ate, and my mother was the first person I ever heard to say these words about what was brain food. Mom, we ate nuts, we ate fish, and she was saying, don't eat
Oh,
too much meat. It's, this was what she was saying in the 60s.
pork makes you slow. Is that what you used to say?
Yeah, she
Pork
said,
makes you
yeah, you can't eat too much meat.
fish.
Pork in particular makes you slow. Don't do that. And and that's sort of how she lived. And she didn't but that was very different than how she grew up.
Sure.
Because I think that growing up on a farm, yes, there were a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables because you had to grow your own food. But then there was also this point at which you realize that they didn't have a lot. So meat was not a big part of their diet because not because it was a choice, well, because it wasn't there and you didn't have good cuts of anything. So all of the things that we think of being sort of traditional Black cuisine, like things like, they ate whatever was left over after
Whatever they could put on their plate, whatever
they ate things like chitlins and pig feet and pig ears and snouts, which I never saw in my mother's house. And I think once she got out of that environment, she was like, never again.
Mm-mm.
And we never had that. No, we're
Good
not doing
for
that.
her. No. Oh my gosh, I can envision her, and I think my mom and she would get along because we were into brown rice and all the macrobiotic as the last three of the seven kids. We all jumped on the bandwagon. It was pretty great, way ahead of the curve. That was our
Oh my
mom too.
goodness. And she was practical. She was very practical. And another story that I share about my mother is that, my dad, dads are dads, right? When I'm the youngest, I'm the baby, and dad would like, oh, yeah, you can have that. My mom would pack my lunch and my dad would pack my lunch. And you know what would be in my lunch when dad would do it? I would have one of those kind of cream-filled turnovers and a banana. And I'd be like, "Ooh, let's let dad make lunch. And no, mom was like, not doing it. Piece of fruit and a bologna sandwich or something like that. It would be
Right.
something very as healthy as she could make it. But to give you an example of like how my mother thought about the world and the practicality of it, and it was nothing illustrates this more than how we bought school supplies and crayon. Okay. So my mother would like, okay, a splurge. I'll give you more than 8. Maybe you can have the pack of 16,
Oh,
but she just did not understand why you needed 64 colors of crayon and a sharpener in the
with
back.
the sharpener in the back.
See, that would be my dad. I can still now see myself longing for the children who had burnt sienna in their color palette. I was like, oh, well, this is the best I can do here.
Oh my gosh. But
That was
she repeated her, right? And it worked.
It
So
worked, but the work ethic, I think that the moral grounding that I
yeah,
had growing up was really important. There is not a day that goes by, and my mother has been gone for, 54 years now, but I still hear her voice in my head. When I do things, I either think of them as either this would make my mother proud or my mother would not be pleased with this particular behavior. And I'm 65 years old. So,
right. She's laughing at me
uh,
now.
for anyone who doubts the value and the importance of mothers and the effect that they have on their children, I can say this, from the perspective of someone who didn't have a lifetime with my mother, but I had enough to be really, really influenced by her, just in terms of what kind of woman I wanted to be and what kind of mother I wanted to be. And a lot of it I had to make up because once we got to the teenage years with my kids, I was like, okay, now I have no idea what we're doing here. But you sort of keep that compass. And she's always been my North Star in terms of having a very clear sense of what's right, what's wrong, how one should behave. All of that really comes from my mother. And I think that by extension, my older sisters and brothers, because when my mother died, I did live with my oldest sister, who was very much like my mother. And unfortunately, I lost her too, way too soon.
Vivian, right?
Yeah.
Vivian.
Yeah. And I lived with her, and then she died at the young age of 63, which
She
I,
was remarkable. She was
yeah,
a civil rights activist. She broke ground like nobody at University of Alabama. And I'm so sorry for your loss, but I believe that they are all present with us,
I
near
feel her
or
every day,
far.
every
So
day.
she's raising her fist to you. And at this point, I would love to bring Allison into the conversation because you work with moms all the time, not just moms, but women indeed, right? And you help us stay fit and strong. So tell us a little bit about your experience. And you are the co-founder of the Not Your Mother's Menopause New Jersey symposium that just took place.
Sure. I just want to thank you, Jackie, for inviting me to be on this, and thank you, Dr. Malone, for participating in our event. And the opportunity to just do this with you is also quite a treat. And to hear you talk about everything that you wrote about in your book, see it all come to life through your voice, is lovely. I loved your book. Yes, I am a women's strength and fitness expert. I've been working exclusively with women for about 10 years on their fitness. And you know, a lot of the women who have, I mean, it's so funny because when we started this conversation and we started with Dr. Malone talking about how her mother was born in the early part of the 20th century and everything she learned, she had to learn through a community of women. One of the things that I learned really that hit me hard in the face after our symposium on Sunday was that hasn't changed. That really hasn't changed. I mean, yes, there is more available to us and there is more research done for and about women. But really, at the end of the day, in order for me and my co-founders to help our community, our sisters and friends and neighbors in our community learn about how to treat themselves in midlife, we had to do it ourselves. We had to organize this event and bring in the experts and talk to the women about what was happening in their bodies. And it really came out of these last 10 years of me working with women. A lot of the women I work with have been with me for 7, 8, 10 years. We've been through a lot together. I've started with them when they came to me 6 months postpartum, and now their kids are going to college or whatever. So we've gone through all this together. In fact, they've seen me do that. They started with me when my son was 6 and now he's 20, and they've seen me go through a divorce and they've seen me go through menopause, and so we've been in this together. So that was really so much of what, I mean, it all comes into the pot and comes to boil together on what drives you to say, this is what the people in my life, the women in my life need. So it was really all of that coming together and really seeing that need, not only for myself, but from the people who come into this space every day to put the symposium together.
So tell us a little bit about, because you are a strength and fitness trainer too. So you offer services, and these every woman can find around the world. But it is an important part of our health is that we get exercise, that we either work out or we are active up and down the stairs. I just got myself a new basketball. I'm going to go out and play basketball as soon as it's not 20. Even if it's 20 minutes, just to, no more sitting. I got the stand-up desk and I toasted my pumpkin seeds again yesterday morning, So it doesn't have to be as complicated and difficult as we tend to make it, right?
Yeah, we do like to do that, don't we, as women?
Yeah.
We like to make things complicated, especially when we've got lots of people that we feel like we need to take care of. And we put those people first. We put our children first. We put our partners first. We put our work first. And as we get older, we really need to find more of a balance, because we're not going to be able to, and I think you said this, Dr. Malone, we have to nurture the mother before we nurture the child, right? And it's the same, put your oxygen mask
on first. My husband says it all the time.
Yeah. My mother would do that, but I don't know. So yeah, I mean, as we age, we need to, and this was a lot of what I talked about on Sunday and what I talk about every day. As women age, it becomes more important for us to move our bodies in ways that help keep us strong and mobile, and in control of our bodies. It really, I think, comes down to that connection to the body. I think we've been sort of pushed aside medically. We are dismissed often, and when we go to the doctor with these amorphous things that may be going on, the doctor doesn't put together the fact that suddenly my shoulder is really painful and I'm really anxious and I can't sleep. So the doctor will say, and traditionally the doctors, here's your orthopedist, here's your anti-anxiety medication, and try meditation before you go to sleep. And all of those things are great, but really we have to start to think about the woman's body as much more complicated and much more holistic, that all of these things really can come from what's happening within our body, that this frozen shoulder that I will tell you as a women's fitness trainer who trains grown-up women, probably at any given time, 50% of the people who walk through my door say, my shoulder hurts. Mm-hmm. Frozen shoulder, plantar fasciitis. It's these complicated joints that react to the changes in our hormones, and inflammation happens. And if we're not moving and we're not attending to that, it's all, what I'm trying to say here is that it's all connected. And it's really important in the work that Dr. Malone and her colleagues are doing is to educate physicians and ourselves that is actually what's happening, that it's not, you can't look at women in verticals like that. You really have to look at them in a much different way.
Right. We are all different, regardless of age, race, and all of it. We are all different. And what I love that you just said, and what Dr. Malone says repeatedly, and what her book is important about, it's about educating the patient to speak up and make sure their voice is heard, especially when they go into a doctor's office. Don't, okay, my 15-minute appointment is up and I didn't get everything in. I guess I'll wait a year, because that's not healthy, wealthy, and wise. And before I forget, I do want to talk about, you mentioned that an unedited version of the symposium may be available for sale, is for relief. Is that correct?
That is correct, but it will be edited. So
edited. Okay.
Eating lunch.
Not that that's bad. Okay. So that I was wondering that. I thought you were trying to get them out sooner rather than later. So an edited version will be available soon, and I will have all of your social media links and everything for Not Your Mother's Menopause New Jersey and Dr. Sharon Malone on my Should Have Listened to My Mother notes. So that information, when you give that to me, that will be posted as well. Allison, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Jackie, can I say something? Because
yeah.
I do a lot of these, all around the country, and I go, and it's always menopause events. And I've said this, and I mean it sincerely, they did such a fantastic job, because it was, let me just say, I know a lot of this stuff. I sat through the entire thing and I was entertained, and I learned some things throughout the afternoon. And it was, I mean, I really cannot say enough good things about the job that they did, because it's hard to be informative and entertaining, and it was really both. So kudos to you, Allison.
Yay. And the whole team that put it all together, and will keep
just me.
No, there was a lot of women involved. But also I will keep updating my show notes for should 2026 bring the next symposium, if not before then. So that's always important to mention. Dr. Malone, I wanted to mention briefly, former First Lady Michelle Obama did write an introduction or forward in your book. And she said, though it's geared toward women of color, it's a must read for anyone who cares about their quality of life. And since, I guess a number of years ago, you have established a friendship, authentic friendship with Michelle Obama. And there's something very important in the message that I read in your book about how important it is for moms and women to have friends, ones that we can confide in, whether they're from childhood, because I know you had a number of childhood friends that you're still in touch with, but also new friends that maybe push us to do something different that we would have done, or go somewhere where we don't know anybody, and try and stay alive and interact with people that may, change our life. I think it's important for all of us.
It is vitally important. And it's not just a matter of it's a nice to have, it's really a must have, because there is research that shows that women who have strong community networks and strong friendships actually do better, not just mentally, but physically. Women who have strong networks live longer, because you have people to go to. I mean, it is hard to get through this life by yourself. You don't know the answers to everything, and you don't know where to put it. And sometimes, and I'd say oftentimes, it's not your spouse or your partner. You can't ask that person to be everything for you. And so one of the things I encourage is that for, to find, it is great to have old friends, but it is great to have new friends. And the older I get, the more important it is for me. I'm like, I need some younger friends. You don't want to be the last woman standing in this game now, so you learn
Yeah, don't
things.
want that.
No, but as an older woman, you get to impart wisdom to the generation behind you. You get to, have that support. And I have to tell you, I have a very rich network of friends from various points in my life. And the one thing that I give, Michelle Obama a lot of credit for is that when she moved to Washington, D.C., she had to uproot her life in the middle of everything. And, in a very difficult situation to have to really find a new network of friends. She couldn't fly home to Chicago every time she, needed to talk to somebody. And it's about trust. And I think as women, a lot of times we don't trust each other, or we're wary, or we're afraid to put yourself out there and really be vulnerable. But I think that the value that you get in being older is that you're also a better judge of people. And the decisions you might have made about who to make friends with when you're in high school is very different than when you're 50,
We hope, right?
I hope. But it helps, and it helps you get through the hard times, the fun times, all the things that we did. And Allison, this too. I do say in my book, when I talk about the importance of exercise and fitness, that was one of the things that she insisted on that we did together as a group. It was a lot. It was, I just wanted to tell you that she didn't just talk that talk. I was like, "Ooh, we're doing that now? Oh, okay."
Oh, I read it in your book. Oh my
me
gosh, it's
too.
wonderful. I wish I could. I was about to say, I wish I could do that, but I can do that if I want to do
Yeah,
that.
you
Just
could.
go visit Allison.
And everyone can do that. But because
Yeah.
here's the thing that when it comes to fitness and exercise, you can make all the resolutions you want to make at the beginning of the year. Now, whether you follow through with them, you'll disappoint yourself.
Yeah.
You won't disappoint your friends. If you make an appointment with Allison and oh, I've paid money, I better go, or you have a group of friends that you get together with that you're going to walk 2 or 3 times a week, that's important because, there are all sorts of benefits that come from having that rich, diverse group of friends.
Dr. Sharon Malone, her book is Grown Woman Talk. I highly recommend it. Your guide to getting and staying healthy. I thank you for joining us. And Allison Kalsched is from Maplewood, New Jersey, co-founder of Not Your Mother's Menopause, New Jersey, but she's also a women's strength and fitness expert. And I thank you both for joining us on Should Have Listened to My Mother. This is magical information.
It was wonderful. Thank you, Jackie.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother.